Welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman, a podcast loaded with practical tips, powerful scripts, personal stories, and simple steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. So get ready to get the information you need to make the impact you want from someone you trust, your friend, parenting expert, Dr. Robyn Silverman.
Hello and welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything, where we give you the tips, scripts, stories, and steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. I'm so thrilled to be your host, Dr. Robyn Silverman, child and teen development specialist, author, and speaker, and most importantly, parent of two great kids who give me the opportunity to love, learn, and grow every single day, whether I want to or not. Believe me, I get it. It's not always easy. And as you know by now, we're in this together, and we have some wonderful people helping us along the way. So who wants more information about how to give the talk to their kids? You know the one, the sex talk. This is one of those conversations that often makes us squirm in our seats, and yet we really have to have it. And we're not just talking about body mechanics here. We're talking anatomy, relationships, consent, porn, intimacy, privacy. There's a lot more to the sex talk than intercourse. But of course, we're going to talk about that too. And remember, while you may not be talking to your kids about sex yet, you'll need to talk about it at some point. Believe me, you will. And likely sooner than later, no matter what your family values are and what you personally think your child should or shouldn't be doing. And for those who have already been in the thick of it, congratulations to you. Perhaps you've already had a discussion about privacy, your child's body, or sex itself. Remember, it's never one big talk, but a series of little ones, especially when it comes to this topic. So this podcast is going to help you give 1, 2, 3 extra nuggets that you may not have thought of yet when the topic comes up again. And this is a touchy topic, so I'm really thrilled to have our guest on today. Our guest is Dina Alexander. Now, Dina Alexander is the founder and president of Educate and Empower Kids. That's educateempowerkids.org. An organization determined to strengthen families by teaching digital citizenship, media literacy, and healthy sexuality education, including education about the dangers of online porn. She is the creator of How to Talk to Your Kids About Pornography and the 30 Days of Sex Talks and 30 Days to a Stronger Child programs. She received her master's degree in recreation therapy from the University of Utah and her bachelor's from Brigham Young University. She is an amazing mom, loves spending time with her husband and 3 kids, and we are so excited she's spending time with us today. We're thrilled you're here. Dina Alexander, thank you so much for joining us on How to Talk to Kids About Anything.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Before we get into the meat of the matter, for those who haven't had the opportunity and pleasure to meet you or read your books, would you just take a moment to tell us what gets you up in the morning? What are you passionate about? And why in the world the topic of how to talk to kids about sex and porn and all that goes along with those particular topics?
That's a great question. People ask me all the time, like, okay, how do you do this? Why do you do this all day long?
Why?
Why do you talk about sex and online, the online world all day long? And I'm like, this is definitely my world. I've got 3 amazing kids and I am literally right in the thick of it. I've got a 16, a 13, almost 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. And so these are topics that affect me on a daily basis. So we have many discussions about healthy intimacy, about social media, various online worlds, and we're kind of trying to help parents understand that our online identity is merging with our offline identity. Mm-hmm. So our goal is to kind of help parents get that idea, help us imagine a better world for our kids through technology. We've spent a lot of time, I myself have been fearful, have been, frustrated by the constant barrage of imagery, pornography, and negative messages about intimacy throughout the years. But our goal, what gets me up every day is the idea of helping kids create a better world through technology, whether that's through new devices that we create, whether that's new platforms that we haven't even imagined, but just helping all of us create a better world using this amazing technology that allows us to connect to people all over the world.
Oh, so awesome. And this is one of those conversations just so necessary. I think it's one of the most highly requested conversations because people don't know where to start. I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and she, told me that her child brought something up related to sex, and she just changed the subject to like, who wants ice cream? It's just, what are we doing right now? You want to watch a movie? It's just makes people so uncomfortable. So given that this sex talk makes parents feel somewhere between nervous and want to throw up, and leave the building, how can parents overcome this crazy fear, this trepidation they sometimes feel when approaching those sex talks?
Well, I think there's a number of things we can do. One of the things that has helped us, and with the many, many parents that we've worked with, is to first look at it differently. Look at these talks as an opportunity. This is not the end of the world. I honestly feel like most of us look at this in an awkward way because we've been socialized to believe it's awkward. Mm-hmm. We've been told dozens of times throughout our lives, oh, it's awkward. Oh, you don't want to have that conversation. When really, when you get down to the heart of it, get to the meat of it, it's like, and once you start, most parents realize this is no big deal. I've got this. I can totally do this. And by seeing it as an opportunity to grow closer to your child, you will create that environment, that special environment that your kids are seeking after of, oh, I can ask my mom anything. That's the ultimate goal for me, is that I want my kids to have a home where they can ask me anything without criticism, without judgment. And so if I look at these difficult conversations as an opportunity to grow closer, I will be a better teacher. If I can help them understand, when I approach difficult topics with my kids, I'm letting them know that one, I'm a source, and two, that I care about them enough to talk about these things. When they will tell you story after story of their friends' parents who will not talk about these things, and I don't want to be that parent. I want to be the parent that they can ask me anything. I also find that it's really important for us to analyze what is making us so fearful. Usually when I have parents that talk to me about what they're fearful of, now don't get me wrong, some of us have had sexual abuse in our past. And 1 in 4 women, 1 in 5 men have had something terrible happen to them. And so they have some very real experience, some very real fears. So we need to take the time to go, okay, what am I really scared about? Is it the topic of the actual intercourse? Is it talking about predators? Is it talking about anatomy? So I would say take 10 minutes to go, what am I scared about here? We have a lot of parents who feel like they're going to be taking their child's innocence if they talk about these things. And I say that is garbage. This is about empowering your child with knowledge. Knowledge and information does not steal innocence. Coming across traumatic imagery online, being faced with a predator when they are not prepared, these are traumatic things, not giving them the tools to deal with those things. So I would say take some time to analyze your fears. And what I find when I work one-on-one with parents, once they boil it down, it's usually only 1 or 2 topics that they are really scared about. It's not the whole thing. And so take some time to see what you're really fearful of.
I know that parents often tell me that they feel if they broach this type of subject with their kids, that they feel like their kids are going to go run out and do it, or their kids are going to feel that by talking about it, it's giving them permission to go ahead and find out more information from whatever source they want because the door has been opened. So how do you deal with that particular fear?
That is a great question because we have that a lot. People think that, I'm going to create curiosity. I'm going to create this monster. I frankly do not believe that. I feel like the curiosity is there no matter what. And there is nothing wrong with curiosity. Curiosity is a healthy thing. It is part of our biology. It is what keeps us alive. It is what keeps us changing, growing, developing, learning new things. So we need to embrace the idea of curiosity. So that, I think, is the first part of that battle. Secondly, I think you need to kind of help them frame where to put their curiosity so that you are going to say, you know what, when you have a question, please come and talk to me. Let them know there are a lot of misleading and very wrong messages out there, not just from other friends, because yes, most of their wrong information is not most, but a lot of their information that's incorrect is going to come on the playground from somebody on the bus, other peers. But a lot of those misleading messages are going to come from different online sources. So we need to direct them and help them know, well, where is a good place? What is a good book to read? What is help them know where the best places for information. And that should lead back to you most of the time, that you are a source of information. That's why we talk to parents about, hey, you be the first source.
Yes, right.
You don't want to wait till when I was a new mom, I was always told, wait till your child asks you about sex. Mm-hmm. Don't bring it up first. And I just don't believe that anymore. Mm-hmm. When people are handing their 2 and 3-year-olds a tablet to play on with no internet blocks on it, they're going to be exposed to something. We have to start these conversations early. And when we start those conversations early, we're letting them know, hey, I'm the source. I am a source of honest information. I am a source that is going to answer your questions, compassionately and kindly. That's when our kids are going to come back to us with other really great questions. And that's a good thing. We want to be asked those questions. We want to be the source, but also let them know where are some good places that they can find good information. And that's going to be according to your values. Mm-hmm. There are some websites that some parents love and that other people hate. Mm-hmm. You need to help your kids know where you're comfortable getting healthy sexual information.
Right. And you want to be the one that they can trust, and that they know that if they ask you a question, you're going to give them the good information, the honest information. And that way they don't have to go to all these other places to find out what it is that you may not be wanting to tell them.
Exactly. And I don't believe in saying, oh, I'll tell you when you're older.
Right.
That to me is a disaster.
Yes.
If my child is old enough to ask it, then I'm going to answer their question for sure. There was, a couple years ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about Monica Lewinsky. She had just given a TED Talk.
Oh, it's so good.
It was a great talk about how she was the first person to be cyberbullied. Mm-hmm. And so at the time he was 9 years old, my son was behind me and I didn't realize it. And I said the word oral sex, and he said, "What's oral sex?" And I knew my older son didn't know either. So I said, okay, well, let's go talk about it. I didn't say, I'll tell you when you're older. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't like a conversation that I was like, yay, I can't wait to talk to my 9-year-old about oral sex. But I was so grateful that he was coming to me and asking me. So I had that conversation, really simple, explained what oral sex was. And then this child is the one that always asks the amazing questions. He then said, what other types of sex are there? Mm-hmm. And I almost started laughing. And so I told him it, and I was like, that is that child. Of course, he is going to ask me the amazing questions. So I told them about anal sex. Mm-hmm. That was not planned. That was not in my day that I had planned, but it was an easy conversation to have because we had already talked about so many other things.
So how do you start those kinds of conversations? I mean, you're saying you had them, but I'm sure that there are people that are just listening to this, shaking their heads, going, "If I was in that circumstance, I don't even know. I'd stick my head in the oven. I don't know what I would do." So tell me, how do we start those conversations? We're so uncomfortable. This is not information we wanted to share, and yet here we are, and the child is in front of us. So what do we say?
Well, I think it helps me that, I had started with other conversations first. So remember, we're going to start the conversation, and I'm going to start with what I am comfortable with. Okay. So maybe a parent is not comfortable starting right with penis and vagina, or is not comfortable talking about anal sex. You don't start there then. Then you start where you're comfortable. Maybe you're comfortable talking about just how amazing our bodies are and all the amazing things our bodies can do. Maybe you have a child that's 3, 4, 5 years old. You're going to start there. Mm-hmm. Your body is so amazing, and it's so amazing that it's worth protecting. And this is how we protect it. And so maybe we're going to have a conversation about clothing. I wear certain clothing in the summer, and I wear certain clothing in the winter to protect my body. And then I might have I'm going to add another layer on where I'm going to talk about, this is where I don't want anybody to touch me. Maybe I'm going to have that conversation about why my body is special. And if anyone does touch me in a part that, where my bathing suit covers, that you are going to come and talk to mom or dad or a trusted adult. And then you're going to have a conversation too about who are the adults that we trust. Right there, that's 5 conversations, that again should only be a few minutes long. I'm not going to plan a 20-minute discussion. When we have done these, when we have recommended these, we say you should plan this out for 5 minutes and then plan a 5-minute discussion. Now, what we also find that it's because you open that door, your kids are going to come back to you with more questions. What usually happens to us then is that it becomes a 30, 40-minute discussion. But so I'm going to start, with, we have to have a goal in mind. Maybe your child is really young. So your goal might be protective information. I need to give my 5, 6-year-old protective information. So I'm going to have a discussion about their amazing body, their anatomy, so that they understand how their body functions and works. How many little girls don't know that their vagina is separate from their urethra? When we think of that as, that is not a shocking discussion. That's a simple anatomy lesson that our kids should know how their bodies work and that they are so awesome, right? So starting there, and then maybe you're going to layer on a discussion about predators. This is also a tough topic for a lot of people, again, because of experiences we've had, but it's something that we need to discuss and we need to repeat. Who is that small circle of friends that we really trust, that we really, that care for us. So once we've had those kind of, I think, foundational discussions, then that helps us to get ready for the tougher topics, the things that maybe we don't want to talk about, where we are going to talk about preparing for puberty. Maybe you're going to talk about the menstrual cycle, and then you're ready to talk about the physical mechanics of sex. Now, again, a lot of parents, we think we're done. Now, we think we're done because we've talked about penis and vagina. Okay. But again, we don't live in that world anymore. Okay. A lot of people are, have chosen or are born with, gay tendencies, or that they themselves are gay or lesbian, transgender. It's time to start talking about these things in a loving, kind manner. We always talk about, I want to be the first to know, because every single one of my gay and lesbian friends has told me how long they struggled and suffered with this for years before they had that conversation with their parents. I don't want that to be me. I want to be the first to know, not the last to know. Right. So again, we're not going to just have a discussion about, heterosexual, typical traditional sex. We're going to start talking about oral sex and anal sex, and again, so you're going to start so even on that topic of the mechanics of sex, right? We're super uncomfortable. We don't want to do this. Where are we going to start? Think about where are you comfortable? Where are you comfortable? We're going to talk about maybe, hey, where do babies come from? Now, usually when we have these, I believe in starting out with I call it a temperature question. You're going to take your child's temperature, right? Where you're finding out, what do they know? Where are they at? So that you can meet them where they're at. So maybe if you're ready to talk about this, you're going to say, well, what do you know? Where do you think babies come from? Or what do you know about, maybe you'll see a friend that's pregnant or someone on the street. Use those everyday opportunities around you. Maybe you even see 2 animals having sex. Use that opportunity. It's okay to draw your kids' attention to 2 squirrels or 2 dogs and to say, what's going on there? Do you know what's happening there? And then taking their temperature and seeing what they know about that. And then seeing what they know about, have they heard the word sperm? Do they know that a sperm and an egg connect to create a child? Do they know that? Ask that question. Talk about, again, find that part that you are comfortable talking about. Maybe with the physical mechanics of sex, maybe you're comfortable talking about the steps leading up to it. Then start there. Hey, you don't have sex, the first hour you meet. What are the steps that lead to sexual intercourse? And so having that discussion. Then when you're comfortable, as you take their temperature, you're going to give them information that they need. Is that about an erection? Is that discussing the clitoris and what the clitoris does, and again, thinking about your child's age. Again, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's something I'm going to wait to talk about when they're 12, 13 years old. You're not going to wait that long, okay?
I know a lot of people are just like, no, let me put my hands over my ears. La la la, I can't hear you.
And I wish, we wish that was the world that we lived in. But when kids are exposed, the average age of exposure to pornography is age 11. Mm-hmm. So we've got to have had these, we need to have these questions before that, have these discussions. And again, so you're going to start where you're comfortable. Is it a discussion of anatomy? To me, anatomy is a very comfortable place to start. But that also might be because my spouse is a doctor, right? And so that is a very easy place for us to discuss how amazing and intricate our bodies are. So again, find where you're comfortable. Is it a discussion of curiosity? Maybe you saw your child looking at pornography. This is becoming so incredibly common. Mm-hmm. And if that, go ahead and use that opportunity. Okay, don't start yelling and screaming. Okay, that doesn't work. But have that conversation. What have you seen? What do you think about that? Mm-hmm. Tell me what you've seen. Tell me about that. How did it make you feel? Do you feel like that's an accurate portrayal of sex? So again, use those everyday opportunities and start with that temperature question. What have you seen? What do you know about this? I also really like starting with something simple of just, hey, I was reading about this. I saw this on television. My friend was telling me about this, especially when it comes to conversations about sexting, social media, or maybe it's about STDs or masturbation. These are things that I usually will say, hey, I've read this. I heard about this. What have you been hearing? What do the kids at school say about this? Mm-hmm. And that's usually just a good temperature, a good starting place for those conversations.
So if a child asks, where do babies come from, for example, and, you've already told them that, there's a baby inside the mother's belly, as we usually say when the kids are really tiny, mm-hmm. and now they've kind of moved up to the conversation of, but how does it get in there in the first place? So that's a pretty young question to ask. Yeah. I would say. I mean, child might be kindergarten.
And it's a very common question. That's a very common question. How did the semen, because we'll talk about, the semen fertilizes the egg. And again, that's a temperature statement. Right. You say that, and then some kids will go, oh, okay, thanks, and they'll walk away. A lot of kids will go, wait, well, how did the sperm get to the egg?
Right. And where did the sperm come from?
Where did the sperm come from? And then, hey, that's where, this is your opportunity. Remember, we're not going to be scared. We're going to look at this as, this is the opportunity. They trust me to have this conversation. Here I go. And I'm going to go ahead and tell them, well, a man puts his penis inside a woman's vagina. And again, then you wait, you look at their face, see if
and they're like,
see,
what?
If you see horror, whatever, you just keep going, you keep, okay, do you understand that? And then they might have a follow-up question. Say, you can ask them, do you understand, that a man places his penis inside a woman's vagina? And then they'll come back to you with the next question. Sometimes it's, does that hurt? Mm-hmm. Why do they do that? How do they do that? And then of course they're going to ask, have you done that?
Right, which is the question, or even worse, when did you start doing that? Did you only do it when you were, and my kids, we adopted both of my kids. So mm-hmm. what's the explanation there? So that they would be like, wait a second, so you didn't do this. And so the conversation has to go into having sex when there's no baby making involved.
That's right. And then that's where you talk about, again, how this is again, your opportunity to frame sex how you want it to be framed in your home, where you can talk about how amazing this is and what a bonding experience is between you and your partner. Mm-hmm. Where, hey, yeah, people have sex to have children, but hey, most of the time we're not doing it for procreation. We're doing it because it's fun, because I love my partner, and this is a great way to show love towards them, and this is a great way to bind us together as a partnership, and again, that's where and then you and then you ask them, do you understand this? Do you understand? And then that's also the opportunity of where you can put your standards there. Right. This is where you put your values. A lot of parents are afraid to put values. And I'm like, this is your home. Right. Your kids need a guideline, and then that is where you can talk about, hey, this is when I think it's appropriate to have sex. If you feel like your kids don't need a relationship, that, hey, it's okay to experiment, when they're in college or whenever. You need to express those honest views. If you are somebody that is deeply religious, you need to express what your views and your standards, because this is where you start setting the expectation. Right, in your home, where maybe this is going to accompany a discussion about birth control and condoms and STDs, but maybe it's not going to go in that direction. Again, we have to remember, and this is hard for me sometimes, because again, having studied this and having done this for so long, I think I know best, but I have to remember that these conversations are not about me. They're about my kids, right? What do they need to know? That this is their but what do they need to know? What is going to help them be a happy, successful adult? So that is where, but also considering it is my home and I have certain expectations and certain standards in my home of what I expect, from my children and how they treat their partners and how they treat themselves. And something we talk about a lot in our home is bodily integrity. And that is the idea that, my body belongs to me and that I am going to choose that sex with me. And, when my children decide to have sex, that it is a privilege, not an obligation for them to have sex, but it is a privilege to have sex with them. And that it's not something that's going to, happen on the first date, because that is the standard in my home. That's what I value. But again, you do it according to your values in your home.
Right. And I'm imagining that the parents who are listening to this are thinking, all right, well, I'm having this conversation, and they say, all right, well, when can I have sex? And the child is a young child. And, then I would imagine they would also ask, when did you have sex? So if it is that the parent feels that they made a mistake, they had sex too early, or they feel like they had sex with the wrong people, or, made some choices that they wish they hadn't. Is that the kind of conversation that you would want to have with your child as they're asking these types of questions?
I think so. I really think so, because again, we have, I tell my kids every day, I make mistakes every day.
Yes.
Tons. And again, and that's also where we need to teach our kids, you're going to make mistakes and you need to forgive yourself. You need to speak kindly to yourself, and that's something that I feel like our parents' generation really missed out on. Our parents were literally taught that part of the sex talk was a good, healthy dose of shame, and we don't do that anymore. But we, again, a 7-8-year-old, that's where you're going to decide, hey, am I going to talk to them about when I first had sex? You decide that, but I think it is okay to say, because when I talk to most women, very few women feel like they had sex at the right time. Right. Most of my girlfriends feel like they had sex way too young.
Right.
And that's okay to say, hey, you know what, I messed up. I wish I had waited just a little bit longer. Or I think I should have waited for this type of partner who would treat me like this, or who was committed to me, or who loved me like A, B, C, D. So it's okay to say those things, to use your mistakes as a teaching tool. I use my mistakes when I'm talking about math with my kid, when I'm talking about algebra, when I'm talking about how I drive, when I'm teaching my kids how to drive, I talk about the mistakes I made as a teenager or the mistakes I make now. Again, take that trepidation away from this discussion where it's like, yeah, hey, sex, you're going to, I've made mistakes, hey, I did it perfectly right, and this is what I want for you.
Do you feel like there are specific do's and don'ts with this conversation? Are there steps you can take, like first do this, then do that? Like what do you recommend?
Well, for the younger kids, we already talked about starting with those super simple discussions, of anatomy, my amazing body. We're talking about predators, again, in that 8 to 11 range. Now, again, remember, these are not conversations that we just have one time, because our kids forget, and we need to layer information on. When we have a discussion about anatomy with a 3 and 4-year-old, they really just aren't going to understand a discussion of the clitoris,
right.
Or, the difference between, an erection. They might understand a spontaneous erection, but that's it. Like they're not going to understand anything beyond that or anything. It's not sexual to them. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So that's again where we have to add that other layer on in that 8 to 11 age range, where I think it's important, we get so hung up again on the mechanics of sex. This is where we also have to start talking about the emotional part of sex,
right.
So we got to add that into that. We also need to talk about healthy relationships very early on. So this is also another great place to start if you don't want to get right to the mechanics, talk about the emotional parts of sex. Talk about what a healthy relationship looks like, not just what an unhealthy relationship. We see unhealthy relationships every single day on television over and over again, shoved down our throats. So we need to model and discuss healthy relationships. This is also where we're going to start talking about masturbation. And we're going to take the shame out of that discussion. We're going to talk about the natural part of masturbation, how a lot of parents freak out about the masturbation discussion, or they email us or they call us because their 5-year-old is masturbating. And I think, again, they don't understand that it's not sexual for that child. They're not necessarily trying to achieve orgasm. They're just feeling good. They're self-soothing. They're exploring their body. So again, helping them understand, that's right, you have an amazing body. So I've also recommended a lot especially for young girls, 8, 9-year-old girls, let them have a mirror and look at their vagina. So a lot of people are like, oh my God.
Yes, I'm sure they are right now. They're listening, going, what in the world, lady?
And again, it's like, this is just a normal part of their anatomy. Girls can't see their vagina just by looking in the mirror. They need to know what it looks like. They need to understand the difference between where their urine comes out and where their vagina is, Make it normal. Help them normalize this part of their body. This is part of protecting it, is by telling them, yeah, that's a special part of your body, but it's worth protecting.
Right.
But I want you to know what it looks like. Again, this is knowledge. This is nothing salacious. This to me is the same as showing them their elbow.
Or so interesting. Yes.
Or their eyeball. I can look in the mirror and see my eye. I can't look straight in the mirror and see all the parts of my vulva and my vagina. And a girl needs to know what she looks like down there, especially if she has a urinary tract infection, if she gets some kind of sickness, if something happens to her where she needs to be able to express to you, this is what happened to me, or maybe I have a burning or a pain down there, or maybe this man touched me there. This boy, whatever. They need to be able to explain that. So again, this is just information about, so that they are normalizing. That's right. This is nothing shameful. Hey, it's just part of my body. I'm going to keep it protected, but it is just another piece of my anatomy. So these are like good starting points, so that again, as they're getting older, as we start talking about predators, as we start talking about sexting and social media, those are huge conversation starters. And those are easy because they are everywhere in our culture. There are stories about sexting, about problems with social media coming everywhere. These are great, door openers for us to talk about various sexual behavior.
My guess is that this often isn't our choice in terms of, first I'm going to talk about bodies with you, and then we're going to go, next week where our session will be on, a mirror and your anatomy, because they probably ask their questions in whatever order comes to mind, and that may not suit you as exactly the way you'd like it to be.
That's right. No, they certainly won't. But also, again, because I went to the National Sex Ed Conference last December, and I was really surprised at how little there was discussed about sexting and social media. And I went to a meeting toward the end of people that maybe want to present next year. And I remember bringing up to the group, I can't believe how little was discussed about technology here, when so many of our kids are doing everything but the act on on technology. And every head in the room started nodding yes. These were all sex educators who they get it, that this is where relationships are being built. We don't like this as adults, as parents, because this is not how we're using social media. But we need to wrap our heads around the fact that so much of kids' quote unquote relationships, including dating, is happening online through social media usually. So that's where we need to be discussing that, and why that's a great door opener to discussing relationships, sexual activity. That's just a great place to start. We can use that. Again, we can initiate that conversation.
Right. It's not the cyber world anymore. This is just their life. It's not cyber life versus regular life, in real life. It is all just their life. So we have to just make sure we know that, and we incorporate it. And if we don't understand it ourselves, we have to go look and learn and understand it. So let's get into it a little bit, because I know this is uncomfortable for most people, and we certainly didn't learn this way. But why should we have a discussion about pornography when we're trying to have a conversation about healthy sexuality, especially when we say, hey, I don't agree with that. I don't like it. I don't want my child learning anything about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether we like it or not, pornography right now is basically the number one sex educator of our kids.
Gosh, just alarming, right?
It has been, as I've researched this over the years, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. Not only because of the availability that's constant, but the level of violence against usually women is just over the top. I've gone to the websites from the porn industry themselves, where they are telling their pornographers, go to Snapchat, go to Instagram, because that is where our kids are.
Oh gosh.
They are literally, targeting our kids, and because they know that if they can hook them young, they have a lifetime customer.
It's a lot of money coming their way. It's perfect for them. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, that's where we need to have a discussion about pornography, where we need to help our kids understand this is counterfeit. This is not created for education. It is not artistic. These are usually exploited women who are almost always portrayed in a position of powerlessness. And this is where I worry that we have literally every future lawyer, doctor, policeman being raised on a diet of pornography.
Oh gosh.
Where they are seeing this constantly and thinking, where we have, boys thinking, that's what girls want. Oh, she starts out saying no, 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 but then at some point she always says yes. And then how confusing is that? And then we wonder why we live in a rape culture.
Right.
And then we have girls who they think, I'm supposed to act like that. Oh, that's what boys like.
Right, I'm supposed to act like that. I'm supposed to look like that.
Exactly. Yes. And so that's where we have a lot of girls on social media. They're cutting out the middleman these days, and they themselves are creating their own versions of pornography. Now, they might not be showing fully naked pictures of themselves. Right. Some are, but they're showing very hypersexualized pictures of themselves. And that is, again, because they feel like, I have to create that. I have to, you and I, when we were teenagers, we wanted maybe boys to like us. Right. We wanted to be cute, but our sexual availability was not part of our self-esteem equation.
Exactly.
Maybe our looks were, and our intelligence was, and how we got along, but how available we were was not part of the equation. That's now become part of the equation for girls. And we need to kind of turn that around. That's again where we have to talk about these tough topics. We don't want to talk about this, but we've got to. That is the world we live in, is that we need to discuss, hey, pornography is not accurate. They are creating it for entertainment of the viewer. What they do in there is not healthy. It is not a loving, intimate relationship. Help your kids understand that there is no intimacy in pornography. There's no hugging, kissing, holding, loving, caressing. It is about the act itself, and that again is a great topic to have with your kids about just what is intimacy? What do you want in a relationship? What is amazing? Help them dream and think about these amazing, healthy, the relationship that they deserve in their future.
Oh, I think this is so important what you're talking about, and I know it's uncomfortable, but I can even imagine, having a conversation where you feel comfortable, which is, just talking about what is out there. There are there are things out there that don't represent what we're talking about here, what you said you've wanted in a relationship, what you see us having in our relationship, and just starting there and then bringing it into, and you're going to see this, and this is on your computer that you might use if you use it in this way, and your friends' houses. And this is what I would want you to do if you were at your friend's house and this came up. What would you say if that happened? So that you can start bringing that into a real life situation for them. Because perhaps when you talk about it sort of out there, they think, all right, I get it, we don't want that. But not thinking to themselves, they might see it tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And helping them know, like, where is the number one place that kids are being exposed? It's no longer desktop computers. Right. It's right on their phone. Right. That my daughter, is in high school. She sees boys at lunch. They're all standing around a phone. They're watching porn, And so, if they were smoking cigarettes, they'd be expelled in a second. Right. But they're watching pornography. And there are sometimes teachers who just walk by and say, put that away. That's all that's happening, even though it's just as illegal to distribute pornography to a kid as it would be to distribute cigarettes to a kid. We don't have those protections. So again, that's where we need to say, you are going to be exposed. Let's come up with a plan. How can we get, especially for those young kids who will most likely be traumatized by what they see, we need to help them have a plan. Hey, you get away from it. You come and talk to me about it. You let me know what you've seen, and we will discuss it, because again, they need to deconstruct that image. That's part of kind of like taking away the shame and taking away that trauma of, especially when they're young, right. But also helping them avoid it. Okay, hey, how can we avoid it? What should we do if someone on the school bus has it? What should we do if it is a group of friends? Help your kids come up with a plan that the two of you are comfortable with, that parent and child feel good about. How do we deal with when we are exposed to porn?
Right. And I love that you underscored that we need to make sure we're talking to our kids about it if it already has happened, that they can come to us and they're not going to get in trouble for it. That they're able to say, this is what happened and this is what I saw. A friend of mine just told me about this, that, their child did see it and they admitted it to their parent and they wanted to talk about it. Okay, this happened and I said it didn't happen, but now I'm coming clean and saying, yeah, it happened, and I need to discuss this because I'm feeling really strange about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can be really hard for a kid because they can be simultaneously traumatized and aroused. Mm-hmm. How confusing is that for the undeveloped brain, right. of a child and preteen? So we need to, again, help them, understand what they've seen, and then again, help them just understand this is not real. This is not real love. This is not a great relationship. You deserve better than this.
So once we've had this conversation, and we've had the conversation about sex, are we done? Like, can we move on?
I wish we could, but like I say to people, I'm like, we just don't check off parenting.
No.
Especially as, I think in the last 5 years, how sex has changed in this country, around the world, because of social media, because of technology, because of dating apps and hookup apps, it is going to keep changing that quickly. And so we need to be very intentional in discussing these things over and over again, even when our kids are in college and out of the house, reminding them of what consent really is, reminding them of what a healthy relationship is, helping our kids understand what sex and alcohol mixed together does to us, how body image affects our sex life. Again, this is where we can have really great conversations, especially as they're teenagers. We're not just going to talk about the negative parts of sex.
Right, sure.
Let's talk about the positive, talk about orgasm. It's okay to help your child understand how an orgasm is achieved. It doesn't mean that they're going to go out tomorrow and have sex and immediately, find a partner. That's something that we laugh about. Like, it's okay to teach your child pleasure, that it should be a pleasurable, good thing. This will also help them make better decisions. Is this person really going to help me have a great sexual experience? Then no, then maybe I'm not going to give them my consent. Mm-hmm. Again, giving them that full picture, like we don't check it off, just like we don't check off parenting. When I was a child and I learned math in elementary school, I did probably 1,000 worksheets to learn how to add and subtract.
Right.
So we're going to have dozens of conversations about healthy intimacy and healthy sexuality, building those healthy relationships.
Mm-hmm. And keeping those doors open for the conversation to evolve, especially as your child thinks about it more. Because they may have a conversation with you on Tuesday and you think it's done, but their Friday night comes along and all of a sudden they're at your door, or you're in the car, which is always when things happen, right? And you're driving along and you're at the stop sign and it's all of a sudden, here we go again. Let's have a conversation about sex or porn or sexting or what they saw on the bus.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, again, because you've had some of these other basic conversations, that's where they know they can ask you and talk to you. And that is a good thing. I think that's, again, where we have to kind of remember, that's right. They're asking me. They're not asking their friends. They're not asking the neighbor. I get to be the source on this. Look at this as an opportunity. This is an opportunity to grow closer with your child by talking about these topics, letting them know you can handle these topics, that you can handle other tough topics, that you can handle the discussion about divorce, about terrorism, about death. Mm-hmm. You can handle this, that they can ask you anything.
I love that. So now it's time for the top tip of the day. If you had one tip that you would want these parents to follow, these educators to follow, what would you say is the top takeaway you'd want them to leave this podcast with?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I know.
Because there's a lot of, I would say, have a goal. Have a goal in these discussions. Is it that you want to protect your kids? Is it that you want them to build a healthy relationship? Think about that big picture before you go into these discussions. Don't just kind of go, okay, well, I heard on this podcast I need to talk about porn, so I'm going to talk about porn. Think about, again, what is your big picture? Do you want them to understand how amazing they are? Do you want them to understand they are worthy of an absolutely amazing relationship? Mm-hmm. Have a goal, because that will guide each of these discussions. Awesome. I want them to understand this so that they know this big goal, that they understand this about themselves.
Awesome.
So have a goal.
Awesome. Have a goal. And what's nice about the goal is, and the big picture is, all right, well, my goal is not I'm going to feel uncomfortable and awkward and this is going to be a painful discussion. You have a really positive goal, and going into it feeling like, all right, I want my child to feel good about herself or himself. I want my child to have good relationships. Now you feel like more on purpose, and you don't have to worry so much about how awkward you feel.
Absolutely. Be positive. I always say, I don't remember a thing my mother taught me about sex, but I remember that she talked about it like this. And so I knew whatever she said about that, it was a very positive thing, and that I wanted to have a good sex life someday, and that was, even though they talked, you do not have sex outside of marriage. I mean, they were very specific, very conservative, but they were so positive about it that I was like, oh, this is going to be an amazing thing. So that helped me. And I'm like, we got to be positive, and we got to remember, it's not about me. It's not about my awkwardness. When they ask me an uncomfortable question, I'm still going to answer it very matter-of-factly. I am not going to be embarrassed, because my embarrassment will make them feel like there's something embarrassing or shameful about this topic.
Well, bravo to your mother. I mean, that's pretty awesome that she was so progressive that she was able to at least say that. And that she was feeling so positive about sex, even though she put parameters around it. That's
exactly.
Really great. Yeah. Give us the resource of the week. So how do people get more information about you? What would you want them to read? Where should they go to get more information?
So our website, educateempowerkids.org, has a ton of resources. We have our books available there. We have 30 Days of Sex Talks for ages 3 to 7, 8 to 11, and 12 plus. It's 3 different books. They have tons of conversation starters. They're a starting point that allow parents to kind of direct the conversation in a way that they feel comfortable. Right on the front page of our website, too, we have what's called the Question of the Week, and you can submit questions to us that we can answer, because if you have that question, 100 other parents have the same
true.
question. So I think that's a great resource. We have another series that we've just started called Don't Freak Out. And that is where we are going to be where we cover tough topics. The first one that we put on a few weeks ago was called Girls Look at Porn Too. That it's no longer just a boy issue. We're going to be talking about masturbation for younger kids and older kids. For girls and for boys coming up, because we tend to freak out more with girls, and I have a theory about that. So that's going to be coming around soon. So that's a great series. Our books are also all available on Amazon. So we have the How to Talk to Your Kids About Pornography, and also the 30 Days to a Stronger Child. So those are some of our great resources.
Well, thank you so very much, Dina. I mean, I feel like I've learned a lot just listening to you talk, and I have a 6 and an 8-year-old. So these conversations are happening, and you're actually prompting me to have additional conversations with them that I think I might have been dragging my feet on a little bit, if I'm being honest. And I'm hopefully I have some company out there who also feel the same way. But I just want to thank you. You've provided us so much important information about this particular topic that parents often dread and clearly don't need to. And you've made it a little bit easier. So many thank yous. I love what you said about being the source, the trusted source for your kids, and making sure they have the right information, the honest information, and that they can come to you at any time. So thank you.
Thank you.
I've got my takeaways, and everyone else out there, I hope you have yours. Let's discuss them. Come up on Facebook. Let's go to the Dr. Robyn Silverman page. That's facebook.com/Dr. Robyn Silverman, and let's talk about it. Or we can go to drrobynsilverman.com, twitter.com/Dr. Robyn. And if you love this podcast like I did, and boy, I really loved it because I needed this information myself, would you kindly go up to iTunes and rate it so that others can learn about this outstanding resource and share it and let people know about it? I really would appreciate it. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to How to Talk to Kids About Anything. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, please visit drrobynsilverman.com. I look forward to weathering the storms and enjoying the sunny side of life together. And please remember, even when it seems like nothing is going right, and we have those days, we all do, you've got this. Even if you've made mistakes, you've got this. You're here, you're human, you're getting the information you need, and on the days that we fall short, and all of us have them, never forget there's always tomorrow. Parenting is the ultimate do-over. I get it. And as there are moments when we doubt our know-how, our choices, our sweet, sweet sanity, please know that you are 10 times the parent you think you are. Until next time, this is Dr. Robyn Silverman with How to Talk to Kids About Anything. Please tune in again and keep connecting through conversation. See you next week.
You've been listening to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, please visit drrobynsilverman.com.